Summary of Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. David, an American, looks out the window of the house he and his fiancée, Hella, rented in the south of France. Alone, he gets drunk and looks into the darkness, thinking about how his relationship with Hella ended and realizing that he never really loved her. This makes him think of Giovanni, an Italian guy he fell in love with when he lived in Paris. David felt, and still feels, deeply about Giovanni, and he regrets not being able to accept these feelings, which he thinks led to Giovanni being jailed and killed. David thinks back to the first time he slept with another man. In this memory, he is a teenager in Brooklyn who spends every summer day with a boy named Joey. One night at a party, he kisses Joey and gets sexually close to him. Even though he likes this, David can't get over what he's done. So, he rushes home in the morning and avoids Joey for the rest of the summer because he thinks that his interest to other guys will not only hurt his father's feelings but also threaten his masculinity. Since David's mother died when he was 5, this is especially important to him. He knows that he is his father's only possession. Still, when he is a teenager, he starts acting out. He picks on Joey and spends his time getting drunk with his friends. At one point, he wrecks his car while driving drunk, which makes his father want to talk to him honestly about what he wants to do with his life. David finally joins the army to make his father happy. There, he has an affair with another soldier who is kicked out when everyone finds out he's gay. David goes to Paris after he gets out of the army to get away from the pressure his father puts on him to be a certain kind of guy. David meets Hella in Paris and asks her to marry him. Hella isn't sure what she wants yet, so she chooses to take a trip to Spain while she thinks about David's offer. As he waits for her, he runs out of money and gets kicked out of his hotel. He then calls Jacques, an older gay man who has a lot of money and often spends it on young men who are attractive. David goes to dinner with Jacques, and Jacques gives David 10,000 francs. Then, they go to a bar that is popular with gay men and trans women. David acts like he doesn't care about this place, but everyone there knows who he is and is waiting for him to stop acting like he's straight. While Jacques and David are having a drink, they notice that Guillaume, the bar owner, has hired a new server named Giovanni. David has trouble covering how much he likes Giovanni, but Jacques is the one who flirts with him in front of everyone. But when that doesn't work, Jacques asks David to bring Giovanni a drink because he wants the young server to come sit with them. David says no at first, but he ends up giving in and asking Giovanni if they can buy him a drink. Just as he asks this, Guillaume comes out from behind Jacques, laughs loudly, and says that Jacques has finally turned David into a bad person. As they talk, Giovanni tells David that he just offered him a drink, and David has no choice but to take him up on it. This is how the two men start talking flirtatiously, but David is very aware that everyone in the bar is watching him talk to this beautiful new server. David and Giovanni agree to go to breakfast with Jacques and Guillaume after the bar closes. They take a cab to a different part of the city and end up at a small, dirty place where Giovanni used to go often. Inside, Jacques and Guillaume start chatting right away with a group of young, poor boys sat at the bar. Giovanni and David go to the dining room to eat oysters and drink white wine while they do this. During the meal, Giovanni tells David the story of how he met Guillaume. He says that it was clear right away that Guillaume wanted to have sex with him. Giovanni did what he had to do to make the old man happy because he was broke and needed a work pass to get a job. He says that this is how he got his job at the bar, and even though Guillaume tried to get with him, nothing has happened between them for a few weeks. David and Giovanni leave the restaurant for the last time. David says he needs to go back to his hotel to pay his bill, but Giovanni talks him into staying in his room by telling him that he will have to see the bill at some point. Once in the room, David is scared as Giovanni pulls him toward the bed, but he can't deny that he's also excited. They have sex, and then David and Giovanni settle into a pattern, since David is now living with his new lover in the small room. Every day, they get up late and walk around Paris until Giovanni's shift at the bar is over. Then, David spends some time alone before meeting up with Giovanni when the bar closes. Together, they get a drink, go to breakfast, have sex, and go to sleep in their room. Because David is dating Giovanni, Guillaume starts to dislike David, but neither David nor Giovanni care. David is happy, but he has mixed feelings about his new relationship. He blames Giovanni for giving him sexual urges that he had kept hidden. So, he loves Giovanni and hates him at the same time, and he can't accept that he wants a long-term relationship with him. He hints at this when he tells Giovanni that Hella is probably going to go back to Paris soon. At first, Giovanni doesn't see why this is important, but he soon realizes that David thinks Hella's return will mean the end of their relationship. Just as he thought, David gets a letter from Hella one day. In it, she says that she'll soon be back from Spain and that she wants to get back together with him. On the same day, his father writes him a message in which he says he won't send any money because he doesn't want David to waste it. Even though he wants to help David, he doesn't know why his son is living in Paris in such a hidden way. David knows that what he really wants to know is if his son has met a girl, but both he and his son seem to know that he can't ask this because he wouldn't be able to handle the truth. David meets a woman named Sue and has sex with her after reading his letters. He does this because he thinks making love to a woman will help him calm down about Hella's return, but all it does is make him feel bad for Sue. When he gets home late that night, he finds out that Guillaume fired Giovanni from the bar. Giovanni, who is upset and drunk, tells him that Guillaume said in public that he stole because he wouldn't sleep with Guillaume. Giovanni was so angry that he punched Guillaume and then ran away. Still in shock, he tells David that if he were alone, he would be in a very bad place, and he asks David not to leave him. On the day that Hella goes back to Paris, David meets her at the train station without telling Giovanni where he's going. As soon as he hugs her, he feels relieved, even though he can't quite hide his doubts. Still, he decides not to worry about Giovanni and plans to spend the night with Hella without thinking about anything but his friendship with her. When she says she's ready to get married, he hesitates for a second, hoping she'll change her mind so he doesn't have to leave Giovanni. But she tells David that she came back to Paris because she realized that all she wants to do is get married and start a family with him. He tells her that this is exactly what he wants. David doesn't go back to Giovanni for 3 whole days. On the 3rd day, though, he and Hella run into Jacques in a shop. Jacques tells David that Giovanni called him and asked for financial help because he was left with no money. Just then, Giovanni walks into the store and yells at David that he thought he was dead. David doesn't miss a beat as he presents Giovanni to Hella. Giovanni knows right away what's going on, but he doesn't try to hide his anger for the rest of the talk. Jacques, on the other hand, seems to enjoy this odd situation. He suggests that they all go get a drink, but Hella says she's too tired. On the way back to her hotel, she asks David about his relationship with Giovanni. He says that Giovanni is just a strong Italian guy who lived with him as a roommate, but Hella still feels like there's something strange about their relationship. Still, she gives up on the idea. In the weeks to come, David will see Giovanni with Jacques a lot. Even though he always wears Jacques' fancy clothes, he looks sick, and David can hardly stand it when he finds out that Giovanni and Jacques have had sex. Soon, Giovanni stops hanging out with Jacques and starts hanging out with younger, rougher guys. But now that he isn't dating David, he decides to try to get his job back at Guillaume's bar. Guillaume is happy that Giovanni and David broke up, so Giovanni chooses to try to get his job back. To do this, Giovanni goes to the bar one night and talks to Guillaume. He tells him to come back after the bar closes, which Giovanni is happy to do. When he gets back, Guillaume takes him upstairs, puts on a silk dressing gown, and puts pressure on Giovanni to have sex with him. After that, he tells Giovanni in an arrogant way that he could never hire him again. This makes Giovanni so angry that he beats Guillaume to the ground and ties him up with the sash of his gown before running away into the streets. Everyone in Paris knows that Giovanni killed Guillaume, and this news is all over the papers. As David and Hella follow the story, they make plans to rent a house in southern France, where they will move soon after Giovanni is found hiding in a houseboat. Giovanni says he's guilty, so he's locked up until his hearing. In the meantime, Jacques sends David letters from Giovanni's lawyer from time to time, but David knows that nothing can stop Giovanni from being put to death. Even though David knew this would happen, he is so sad that he gets drunk one night and goes to the city of Nice, where he spends 3 days drinking and having sex with a sailor. Hella finally finds him on the third day and finds out the truth about David's sexuality. She immediately packs her bags and leaves for the United States, upset that David kept such a secret from her for so long. David gets a letter from Jacques telling him when Giovanni will be killed not long after she leaves. When this day finally comes, David packs his belongings and leaves his home in southern France. As he is leaving, he is imagining Giovanni being put to death and blames himself for what has happened to Giovanni, whom he now understands was the love of his life.
About the author. James Baldwin was born in Harlem in 1924. His grandfather was a slave, and he was the oldest of 9 children. David Baldwin, a Baptist clergyman, became the young author's stepfather. Baldwin's relationship with David would change over the years, but it would also shape him. For example, Baldwin's experience as a youth minister in an opposite church was both a response to and a rejection of his Baptist preacher's stepfather's example. Baldwin said that his time in the church, where he had to prepare and give several sermons a week, was an important part of his growth as a writer because it pushed him to think about a wide range of human feelings. In his most famous book, Go Tell It on the Mountain, and in his play, The Amen Corner, he talks about these things. After he graduated from high school, Baldwin spent most of his time as a book reviewer in Greenwich Village, which was a hub of imagination and forward thinking at the time. Around this time, the famous author Richard Wright saw Baldwin's ability and helped him get a grant so he could work on a book and make money while he did it. Baldwin went to Paris in 1948 to get away from America both physically and mentally so he could write more clearly about his home country. The result was the book Go Tell It on the Mountain, which he put out in 1953. Baldwin moved back to the United States in 1957. When he did, he joined the civil rights movement. This was the start of his well-known career as an outspoken agitator and socially aware public thinker who fought for calm answers to race tensions in America. Baldwin spent the last 10 years of his life working in France. He wrote a number of important books about American identity after Medgar Evers and Martin Luther King Jr. were killed. Baldwin died of stomach cancer in St. Paul, Delaware, France, in 1987.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.